All right, Chicago, are you ready for your next panel? Oh, I don't hear you. Are you ready for your next panel? All right, let's get hands together for Sam of Rhystic Studies.
Hey everyone, great to see you. My name is Sam, I run the YouTube channel Rhystic Studies. Rhystic Studies is all about getting crunchy with the arts and world building of Magic cards. I do videos about culture and the history of this cool game, but one of my favorite topics is building these worlds that we get to see on the cards. So thank you for joining me today. I know it's right in the middle of the day. This is a packed, sold-out con, and I hope you're having an awesome time. But you know, as per my style and tone, I like to take it easy and chill out for a second. So that's the energy I'm trying to bring to this. You get 1 hour to just look at Magic cards in a very specific way. So today I'll be speaking with a couple of folks who worked on murders at Karlov Manor. And like I was speaking to a minute ago, we want to get to those details. My whole goal always is that you walk away from this panel and you look at a Magic card in a different way. Specifically for murders, you get to see kind of those nitty-gritty details that are easy to miss when you're looking at a postage-size piece of artwork on a Magic card. And especially because this set was all about, you know, the hidden details and taking just one more beat to try to find evidence in the background, you know, hiding underneath a chair. I'm hoping that by the end you perk up a little bit differently when you open up a booster pack. Okay? So that's my goal. Take a you know, a nice, comfortable seat, get a beverage going, and relax. We're going to have a great time. So without further ado, I'd like you to welcome to the stage Forrest Schehl and Emily Teng from Wizards of the Coast. All right. OK, so as per tradition, I introduced myself for far too long. So I'd like to start with you, Emily. Could you please introduce yourself for our lovely audience here?
Yeah, hi. I'm Emily Teng. I'm a narrative designer, and I was the world building lead for Murders at Karlov Manor.
OK. Could you hear Emily? I'm not sure if her mic was on. No. OK.
Where's
there you are. Yeah, you can. Yeah, just speak a little louder. You're good.
Oh, wait, does this work?
Can you? Yeah, nothing? OK.
Up.
No, a little down.
Down?
There it is. Yeah.
OK.
Go for it.
I don't think it'll stick that way, but I'll just hold it like this the whole time.
OK.
Should I
sure, yeah, if you could introduce yourself again.
Hello again. I'm Emily Teng. I'm a narrative designer, and I was the world building lead for Murders at Karlov Manor.
Great. Thank you. And Forrest, yeah, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. My name is Forrest Schehl. I was, that seems kind of ominous, but I guess it's appropriate for this set. I worked on commissioning art for Murders at Karlov Manor, and I had the distinct pleasure of working on the lead art director for this set, Deborah Garcia, who cannot be here today because she is working on the next amazing thing that everyone is going to love. But I will be doing my best to represent her up here on the stage, and I'm just super excited to talk to Chicago about all the amazing art on this set.
Sweet. All right. So I would like to start with Emily. Emily, what is kind of the gist? If you know nothing from Magic, you're looking from the outside in, what can you tell me about Murders at Karlov Manor as a set from the perspective of world building?
Hello. OK. So this set, it's really about, it's our love letter to the mystery genre. It's really about the mysteries, the detectives. They're the stars of the show. So we have this, like, we came up with this awesome detective agency, and the detectives in it, they're not like law enforcement. They're really just like puzzle solvers. And so we gave them like this huge mystery to get into. We just have, and that's the basic premise of the entire set, just like the detectives and all the mysteries that they have, that they're running around, all the answers that they're trying to find.
Cool. So this is a love letter to detective novels. We're going to speak a little bit about the tropes that goes into a murder mystery, because it's not a uniform genre at all, and Magic really wanted to play in that space. But yeah, that's the gist of this. So could you speak a little bit about why we chose to go back to Ravnica to set our story within?
Okay, so it's kind of funny. When we were first starting out, like figuring out what this world was going to be, we were thinking like, oh, should this be a new world versus a return to world? I think one of the ideas that we had was actually like, what if this is a resort world where people from across the multiverse can come and relax, and they just happen to be dying off for whatever reason at an alarmingly high rate.
What a wonderful resort, yeah. You've sold me.
It's like, relax for the last time.
Okay, yeah, right. Just one last vacation, right.
But we ended up deciding to go with a return to world because, first of all, if we went to a new world, we'd have to develop all the visuals, the identity of the world from the start, and then layer on murder mysteries. That was just a lot that we'd be asking everyone to like familiarize themselves with. Whereas if we did a return to, we can go to a setting that people already know. It has established locations, characters, backgrounds, and then all we have to do is layer the mystery on top of it and develop the visuals to support that.
And we were recently on Ravnica in March of the Machine. I mean, March of the Machine kind of, the whole premise was to conquer the entire multiverse. So there is a recent happening that took place. This set takes place after that. So what was that like from the world building perspective? What were your goals to note that event?
So that was definitely a big goal of why we wanted to go back to Ravnica. It's like because we did have this big event, and we just want to go back and like touch on some of the ramifications and some of the changes that have happened. As for why Ravnica in particular, it's one of Magic's best known planes, and it has a bunch of characters that people already know and love, and it has this really complex political system with the guilds and a lot of upheavals from recent events, and that are just like great like fodder to dig into and
there you go.
And okay.
Yeah.
And use to like build murders off of
Sure.
murder mysteries.
Sure. So Forrest, we've set up on Ravnica, but again, time has passed since the last time we were there properly, aside from the March of the Machine. What does that mean from the perspective of art direction and actually telling artists to paint?
Yeah, that is a really good question. Why don't we take a look at the next piece of art, if we can?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Oh, totally normal garden. Everything's fine. The thing is, whenever, as I'm sure you're all aware, a plane is not just a static object that never changes. Every time we go back to it, we try to advance the story forward and show the passage of time. One really easy way to do that is to show season change. If you remember last time we were in Ravnica, it was fall, and so that permeated every aspect of the cards visually. So we figured that we would push the clock forward, and we would set it in spring as a very loud way to show, hey, this is different than the last time that we visited this plane. It also it happens to be a great way to balance the macabre with the generation of new life and the flowering of spring, and I think that tonal comparison is very interesting.
It also sort of tied into the whole thing of like the Phyrexian invasion happened, things were destroyed. Now we're like a rebirth is happening, rebuilding.
Absolutely, yeah, that is a really good point. It not only is shown in the environment and the flowering plants and all that stuff, but it also it contributes to the motifs as well. You can see on this image that different flowers are quoted in the wallpapers, in the way that we see filigrees on lamps. If you look at the set, throughout the set, you're going to see the evidence of spring and everywhere, not just in the environment, but in the costumes and the architecture as well.
It also helped obscure the identity of the killer.
That's true. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, another fun story little beat there.
Yeah, and this shows up also as, in the costuming and sort of the main illustrations. There's a couple of, there's a couple of nods to this flowering motif, I guess, in this piece right here. So can you speak to that? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. This is an amazing piece by Uriah Voth, and you can see how the delicate folds of flowers and the bright, vibrant colors are contributing to this amazing, ostentatious dress we see in this image. Just a fantastic job, and it really showcases the effects of spring all over the plane of Ravnica in this set.
And then you can also set up some wonderful set pieces. Since it's a murder mystery, like you have to have those well, it has to happen somewhere, Those are the 3 keys to that. So some set pieces, what did you think about in terms of set pieces?
Yeah, we delved into a couple of different important set pieces that we're going to see right here. The first one up is the Hellbender Club. I think if you've seen any noir piece of media, you know that it's important to have that Copacabana hot nightclub spot where you go to see and be seen, but also the detectives can go there to gather information and see what the suspects are up to. And the Hellbender Club was definitely the place where that was that trope in our set. And plus, it's Judith rocks.
Yeah.
And it's we needed a cool place for Judith to hang out, right? Yeah. Heck yeah.
Great, and then obviously it's in the name, but we have to have a manor at some point.
Indeed, yeah. The reason for the season, more or less, Karlov Manor. This is an amazing piece of concept art by Leon Tucker, who's actually here today. You can go see him at his table. This is something that Deborah told me while we were talking about what I was trying to download all the information from her and so I could inhabit the Deborah persona up here on stage for all of you. And she told a quote to me that I'm going to try to pay homage to. It's like when she was thinking about this particular design, she wanted this to feel like at nighttime, a glittering garden party and really sparkle and feel magical. But you can also see it in many times in the daytime. And what that meant to her is that she wanted that to feel like a sleeping partier. And that is to say that there is something magical when you're out at night and you have all of your accoutrement or makeup on and the glitter is sparkling. But sometimes when you see that in the light of day, you're like, whoa, oh boy. It becomes mundane. And I think that is what Karlov Manor ends up looking a lot like other parts of Ravnica during the day, but at night is really when it comes alive.
I think she also wanted to get some nods to Clue, right?
Absolutely.
The Clue Manor.
Yeah, she told me about how she watched the movie Clue with Tim Curry on repeat over and over and over again, and that really contributed to the interior of the mansion. Especially eagle-eyed viewers, when you're looking at those cards, you'll see some hints in the architecture in the interior and also the color palette of some of the rooms, especially the dining room. So that was a really cool callback. I also love the Clue movie, so it was great for me to see that.
I will say this is a good image to look at. So there's a lot of visual puns in this set. The visual puns can lend information to the keen eye, and it allows you to be a bit of a detective when you're looking at cards. The symbolism of a labyrinth in front of the manor, of course, is evocative of the mystery that will take place. So the world building team could also lean into those sorts of tropes and those visual cues to set the tone of the paintings and set the tone of the world as an extension. Speaking of tone, the core tone of a murder mystery, of course, might be that there's a grisly murder that's occurred. You get to play a lot with light and shadow, and I'd like Emily to start by speaking about the main tone of this set.
Yeah, so the main tone that we were going for is one of a dark, compelling mystery. Really leaning into noir with that. We did that a lot on the cards through the use of shadows. We really leaned into very hard geometric shadows, this piece right here. This is straight from the World Guide, just to show you there's such a strong contrast between light and dark.
Yeah.
Also, there was a want for long geometric shadows that felt sharp and dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think this illustrates that very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have this painting by Donato. Again, this isn't a blast. Like, this is supposed to evoke that danger around every corner, right? And there's a visual motif that happens across the next couple of paintings of shadows framing and cutting apart figures in the foreground through the background images.
Yeah, it's supposed to really add like a sense of mystery and like, I guess, broodingness.
Sure.
It's like you need this sort of darkness to be like, oh, I can stand under a street lamp at night and there's like midnight rain drizzling all around me. Really Nora that way.
Yeah.
This one's actually really interesting because it's not obviously like as deeply shadowed as the others, but for this piece, for Tristani, like we really deliberately asked for a subtle shadowing to be falling across the face of one of the dryads to hint at like, there might be something going on with that.
Yeah.
Something not quite right.
Maybe foreshadowing.
It's actually 3 shadowing. Okay.
That was
Great.
so loud.
We're alive.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have this dark and shadowy, but speaking to clues, speaking to every murder mystery you've seen, you also have to have the campy and the theatrical. So this is the sugar and spice, or the sugar and the salt. What's the other half of this, tonally speaking, what's the other half of this plane looking like?
Well, before we get into that, I'd
Yeah.
love to speak to a little bit about Memento Mori, which is what we're seeing on this piece of art in particular. Because while this piece of art is very colorful, I wouldn't say it's campy necessarily. Memento Mori is the reminders of death, and this was very important for Deborah to get into the card set.
Oh yeah, no, wait, you just said what I was gonna.
Did I?
Yeah. So. Yeah. No, like this piece is like, yeah, you can see like the reminders of death there with like the rotting apples, all these like falling flower petals, all there, because who doesn't love to be reminded of their own mortality while they play a card game?
I know I do.
And then the next, I think the next image coming up too. Yeah, I mean this one is not subtle, at all. But
Oh, it's fine. I'm sure that's just raspberry. They're having a
He's just sleeping.
beautiful
Yeah.
breakfast.
Yeah, to balance the sort of dark tone. What do you think about the campy
Yes.
theatrical?
So this was, as you mentioned before, I'm sure all of you out there, if you've ever had a chocolate chip cookie that has a little bit of salt on it, you know that little secondary flavor really elevates the whole experience. And so this is our salt, our little sprinkle of salt on a sweet cookie of death, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so you see this jaunty fellow out there living his best life. I mean, if this outfit isn't campy, I'm not sure what is. But I really want this amazing hat with what looks like a lily pad and a flower on top. Like, I want this hat.
Yeah.
Did anyone
I
sell
want
this
that
hat?
hat too.
What?
I want that hat too.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good hat.
And then, of course, you can lean into one of the whimsiest magic artists, Jesper Icing. This is this is a visual pun that fits perfectly with the campy tone. What's going on here?
Yeah, this is fantastic. This is an image it's one of my favorite images from the set, and it just gets funnier the more you look at it. Because we have here a Loxodon detective who could not be more obvious what he is doing. He is eavesdropping on the table next to him, but hard to hide that he's doing that. But truly, this is a wildly funny image, and what better person to bring it to life than Jesper? And it really shows like how we can have investigation, but it can still have that feeling of camp and humor that balances everything out.
Cool. How about the detectives? Okay, we're going to set the scene. There's a murder. Who's going to solve the crime? How does that align with what's going on mechanically with magic? We can start with the white detectives. What are they all about? How do they approach the case, as it were?
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, we had a lot of guild-aligned detectives in the set, but there was a need for agency-approved, this is important, but unaligned with a guild detectives. So that was an opportunity to really delve into a lot of the popular culture references and references of detective media in the set. First up, of course, are the white aligned detectives. These are the cleanest cut of all the detectives in the set. We're talking about pressed pants, steamed, angular, precise cuts. These are the most by-the-book detectives that you are ever going to meet on Ravnica, and they are inspired by what I have come to call the suits and glasses shows like CSI.
Yeah, nice prim and proper, by the rule book type
Absolutely,
of
and
book.
they serve as an amazing contrast to a lot of the other looks. A lot of the other looks are more rumpled, or the silhouettes are a little bit more extreme, but the White Line detectives are just completely buttoned up, and their silhouettes are very close to the body, and all of that really plays into their identity, both from how they investigate to like the color of mana they're associated with.
Speaking of rumpled, the Blue Line detectives, they're probably the most rumpled. The Blue Line detectives, they're the cerebral thinkers. This is where we get like Hercule Poirot and Sherlock Holmes. They're the ones who like to gather all the evidence, think it through to the logical conclusion, and present you with the only possible answer based on all the known evidence. And you can see it in how they dress. Like, they don't really like legwork. They're really much more comfortable just sitting on a couch. You know, they look very comfortable in those outfits. And if they do have to go out, they're not doing it without all their gadgets, all their tools to so they can get in the field and then get out again as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I mean, look at all these gadgets.
In contrast to the prim and propers, let's speak about how black might solve a murder mystery.
Yes. Yes. Well, I'd love to tell you more about Black Line detectives, but I'm frankly terrified of them, so I'm not. The Black Line detectives have a couple of really interesting visual cues that I'm going to speak about in a moment. But these are the most rule-breaking of all the different detectives. They will do anything to get their get their person or to solve a case, and they don't care which laws they break doing it. And you can see that represented in the costumes, because we get these really large sweeping lapels that are super dramatic and pointed, and then we have a hat that is almost always tipped over one eye and covering one eye to sort of denote the lack of trust there. And then they have like the most dramatic trench coats that create these really wide billowing silhouettes. And they're inspired by detectives like Jessica Jones, who are more interested in solving the case than playing by the book.
Yeah.
They also always wear gloves.
Exactly.
They don't leave fingerprints.
And how about red? What's happening in red?
So the Red Line detectives are the hotheads. They're the loose cannons. They're the ones who they don't really play by the rules either, but it's not because they disregard them. They just think that it gets in the way of, getting to the answer. They're more likely to they're the ones who follow their hunches. Like, they follow their guts, and they don't really wait around to they don't like waiting for all the paperwork to go through and all that. So they're actually the ones who end up in trouble the most, because they're the ones who will run ahead and kick down a suspect's door without waiting for backup. And we took that in mind when we built their costuming. We gave them shorter capes for easier movement, thicker fabrics to help protect them when they inevitably get in trouble.
Cool. Yeah. Love a goblin detective. I mean, that speaks to the malleability of Ravnica as well, because you get to put a goblin in a detective coat. That's sweet. Forrest.
Yeah.
Take us through the forest. What's going on with green?
Well. How appropriate that you have me talking about the Green Line detectives. It's almost like we play on this. The Green Line detectives are really cool. As you can see from these images, they are built to trudge through the underbrush. We are talking reinforced, waterproof clothing, very cool looking hats, a lot of times with sunshades. And they oftentimes will be seen with cages, because, as you might imagine, they are the most adept with working with animal companions to help solve their cases. They're also the most community-oriented, so they're going to have that whisper network that they'll be able to gather information and intel from, And they're really inspired by, I think they're the most inspired out of the set by cozy mysteries, like Miss Marple or Jessica Fletcher from Murder, She Wrote.
Series.
The Cat Who series, who can forget that one?
Yeah.
All the little footprints on the book, love them. But yeah, you know, I obviously have a special place in my heart for the Green Line detectives.
Cool. And how about what they're wearing? I mean, what signals to, you know, if you find a figure on a magic card, how do I know right at first glance that this is someone that's on the case?
Yeah, great question. Well, a lot of that depends on the detective's gear.
Cool.
The detective's gear is, there we go, fantastic. Look at this. The detective gear is what differentiates the detectives from other people in this set, truly more than anything else. And there are 3 really important aspects that make up the detective silhouette, and these are present on pretty much all of the detectives that you can see in the card set. One of them we mentioned before as we were looking through the other detectives, and that is the big lapels. That was super important to Deborah to get those big angular lapels there to differentiate detectives from other characters. The second was this awesome harness. Now, we're not going to put, this isn't a set with guns in it, obviously, but that shoulder harness is very iconic when we think about investigative movies and things in that trope space. So Deborah really wanted to recapture that silhouette and that color break in the design of the detectives, but do it in a way that fits well with Ravnica. And so they came up with this really amazing design where everyone has these asymmetrical harnesses where they can keep all of their gear, like dark lights and
Magnifying glasses.
what's that?
Magnifying glasses.
Of course, magnifying glasses
holster.
is a key thing.
Yep.
But the thing you'll notice is there are very few symmetrical ones. Even if we see a traditional shoulder holster type inspired design like we see in these bottom images, they're only going to be on one shoulder. And so that was a way to differentiate it and separate it from the mundane, which is something that we're always trying to do when we go to these fantasy worlds.
Sure.
Another thing that was very important was badges. Of course, how do you know that this is an agency-aligned detective without a badge?
Yeah.
And so they designed this amazing badge that incorporates the all-seeing eye with this amazing Ravnica-inspired city silhouette. And you can see here how it can fit into all the different color combinations that you might need to express the different mana alignments of the different detectives you're going to see in the set. I love this thing. I want one. I want it as a pin. I want to wear it all the time.
You have to earn it, you know. You have to solve a case. Okay. You have to have visual solves because we're in a fantasy land and there's magic involved. We can't explicitly make a photo camera, but when you pitch this to Ryan Pancoast, like, how do you sell him on painting a camera, a long lens camera, you know?
I mean, with Ryan, you just say, here you go.
Yeah, true.
Show us what you got.
Yeah.
No, this is a really amazing interpretation of something that, again, this is a thread that you'll see throughout this entire set. It's the mundane nature of some things, and then we make them fit in Ravnica by adding these details. As you can see here, like everything about it, the way that it's being held, the silhouette, it says, oh, this reads as a Nikon to me. But then you look further and you do second and third reads, and there's all these cool lenses, these gems that you hit to actually take the picture, and then of course, like, the amazing picture that is contained within the reflection of the lens is this is an amazing piece.
It's an easy way to make something magic. Just add some glowies in there.
Well, I mean, you've given away our secret.
And finally, of course, I mean, detectives, to complete the outfit, as it were, got to go around, if it's raining in the springtime, springing up all these flowers, you got to put a hat on.
That's absolutely
Talk
right.
to me about the hats.
I would love to do nothing more. Hats were a really interesting thing in our set. There were very specific rules about where and when we could use hats, and the only reason I'm so familiar with this is I got in trouble so much for not doing this on the cards I was commissioning.
Good.
But whenever there's a scene where you see a detective detectives don't always wear hats. But if they do wear hats, then all the bystanders can't. Because we want to make it clear who is the investigator and who are the bystanders. And that was a very easy way to do so. So hats, in addition to that, they're inspired by the hats you would expect from a noir genre, but then we've widened that to encompass all sorts of hats. Really, the key thing was it needed to shade the eyes because that gave us another opportunity to create dramatic shadows in a scene.
Sure.
It's pretty funny. Like on the world building team, we've been very anti-hat for the longest time. It's like no hats ever, and now we are getting hats for multiple sets in a row.
That's right. It's our hat block.
Yeah. So there's another visual solve here, speaking again to magic and how magic kind of materializes. If you notice this and you picked up on this, this is a cool way to figure out where the scene of the crime takes place, because this is not, it's not crime scene ribbon. It's lights that suggest crime scene ribbon, right? So that's just a play that you get from working in a magical space. Okay, so we have the detectives, we have an understanding of where we are, but the needs of the game demand a certain, you have to fill out the rest of the card block. So what's happening with the rest of outside of the detectives in this space?
So, I mean, when we're looking at like filling out the card set, you need creatures, you need artifacts, you need spell effects, a lot of them. And for the creatures, at least, like, yeah, we get a lot of detectives, but we can't fill it up only with detectives. Like in any mystery, there's always going to be this cast of characters that you have. You have all your people of interest, your suspects.
Sure.
Like this next image that's going to come up. Yeah, you have all your suspects, all your shady characters. You have witnesses. You have the innocent bystanders. Like this innocent dog walker who is just going out for a stroll at like 7 in the morning and then stumbles upon a dead body.
The start of every Law and Order episode right there.
Yeah.
And then we could also fill out like the creatures that we needed with by leaning into some of the like tropes or the tropes of the genre. Like this is a literal red herring, a physical red herring. And yeah, that's like one of the fun things that we could do because this is a magic set, because we have access to like making things fantastical. Oh my gosh, what's the word for it? It's not fantastic. Magicaling up.
Magical, yeah, I like that one. Let's use it. If that's not the phrase, let's use that one.
Things, yeah. Like the next one is another example of that. We have the print lifter ooze. In real life, you dust for prints, but on Ravnica, you have an ooze who will like stick a little hand on there and then just lift a print like that. So that covers creatures, but then we also had like spells and enchantments that we had to fill out, and we leaned into magical effects a lot for that. Like any real world investigative techniques or tools that you might use, we made fantasy versions of that.
Yeah.
We did a lot of like investigative magics, like forensic magics. We tried to do a lot with like visualizing all this, like externalizing all these more internal thoughts.
Yeah.
Like Forrest, do you want to talk about this one?
It was a really interesting challenge. Everyone has probably seen the newer iterations of Sherlock Holmes, and they do a lot with like how they visualize his mind palace, with floating numbers. Everyone's seen the memes and all that stuff. But we had to take that into the realm of magic and create like these. So it took a lot of forms, be it like ribbons that are coming out of somebody's head that you can read, and of course we see here this amazing picture, this amazing painting by Kate Burmack. I believe that's correct. Where we show the visualization of somebody's thought process. Because if you think about it, it would be very boring to just to have like 50 cards where someone's just like, I think I'm thinking about something.
There's only so many angles that we can do this on.
Yes, the steepled fingers. Exactly.
Well, it wouldn't be a murder mystery without the big case. Can you kind of set the scene for what is actually occurring in the story, in the narrative that draws us to the manor and why we're kind of navigating this scenario?
Yeah, so this set was a little bit of an experiment in how much we were integrating story throughout the set, because it's not like an event set where the entire thing is around one event, but it's also got more story built into it than like a normal set. I think it has like 20 story spotlight cards or something like that. It's a big number. But one thing we wanted to try and do was help you get a sense of how to order all these story spotlights. And we did that through time of day. What we did was we broke the story up into 3 acts. The first act was when the initial murders take place in the manor. That happens at night. And then the second stage, did I say stage?
Yeah, second act, yeah.
The second act is when the investigation widens out to the rest of the city, and you branch off into a couple different investigations. And then the third act is like the big reveal, the final confrontation with the killer, and that takes place in daylight, in bright daylight. And we did this progression from like darkness to dusk to light so it's as if you're going from the darkness of a mystery, gradually you're revealing more of the truth until the light of the truth is, you're seeing things in the light of truth. And it's one of the things we do to try and get some linear progression in what's a very non-linear storytelling format. We did something similar in War of the Spark with like the colors of the sky during the different stages of the war, and then in March of the Machine also, like the increasing Phyrexianization of the landscape.
Yeah, one of Magic's biggest challenges is you can't tell a linear narrative because people experience a booster pack out of order. So I love hearing details like this. Emily just spoke about March of the Machine. March of the Machine was the same way, where the sky got progressively more magenta as the invasion occurred. So you kind of could get a quick glance at a card and say, oh, this is the third stage of the invasion because there's so much magenta. Same thing here, like this, again, it's a kind of a visual pun. Like the more we know about the mystery, the more it is being revealed, the brighter the sun gets until it's wide out in the open. So those are the cool insights that I get from you who think a lot about this kind of stuff, but we might look at a Magic card and say, oh, this is taking place during the day. In this set, that matters. That matters a lot, which is super cool.
Yeah, I have to say that I have a lot of professional jealousy towards you and Deborah about this decision in particular. I love this choice, and it is such a brilliant way to tell a linear story out of order, and I just love it. It was just like kudos, hats off to both of you.
We were in a meeting trying to figure out how we would show linearity, like progression of time, and then I don't remember who, someone came up with that, and everyone's just like, oh yeah.
Yeah, so the big cases, again, that's more of the noir, that's more of the shadowy figures, murder side. Again, the campy side, it comes through in some of the smaller cases, right? So this is where you get to be a little more playful. Again, always thinking about visual puns. What's happening with the smaller cases?
So this was just something I thought would be a fun little thing to do, because I just love making things more complicated for myself than they have to be.
Who doesn't?
So there's 10 or 11 case enchantments in the set, where I thought it'd be fun to just make them actual like 3-card mini mysteries within the set. And I didn't want to make it obvious, but it's just sort of like linked together with an object that repeats through all 3 cards. Sort of like, you look through the card set, and if you notice these, you're like, oh, hey, what's going on? Why is the same object appearing in these cards? And then you can start to like notice like these linkages and maybe make a little story of what's going on for yourself. So for this case, like the case of the Uneaten Feast, this whole story was sort of inspired by the Lamps of Slaughter by Roald Dahl,
Okay.
where it starts out with you see this dinner setting, something's clearly happened. You see this beautiful hunk of roast crowvod, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, in the middle of the table. And so the story I have in my head going on for is like, oh, you are trying to figure out like, someone's been killed or whatever. How do you? But we can't find the murder weapon. And then you see the form familiar snacking on this tasty, hefty-looking piece of meat. And then you're like, oh, so that was a murder weapon after all. Robot haunch.
Yeah, just a nice little 3-arc narrative. And again, it could be in a more playful space because at the end of the day, the cat's, chewing on the meat, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And this has happened, of course, across the set. The second case here that you could speak to, Forrest. Give me the lore here. What's going on?
Yes, I'm glad that I got the download from Emily about this one. What was her headcanon before coming out here? Because it's actually way more interesting than I initially suspected. This presents itself as, first of all, a reference to the Maltese Falcon, but also a theft of this very valuable artifact bird. But in fact, it's a jailbreak. We see in the first image that we have this electrical cage that is protected by magic, and there's candles all around it, and those are part of the spell that's creating the barrier. Well, this falcon here has figured out that has happened and snuffed one out somehow and was able to escape. Maybe it had a little help from the outside.
Jailbroke itself.
Ah, exactly. But in the second image, we see that same candelabra or candlestick from the saga with fingerprints on it, and then finally we see the bird in question, the coveted bird, free on a parapet with the candlestick behind it. And again, we have this continuity that carries throughout all 3 cards and tells that 3-part story very effectively. It was super fun to work on. I commissioned, I think, at least 2 of these images, and it was so fun to work on these, but also be very cognizant of when they occurred. That's something that I know that you and Deborah spent a lot of time on.
Yeah, because of how the timing of how art gets commissioned, it was almost like a little puzzle itself, trying to figure out okay, we always have to have one of these pieces commissioned before the other so we can use that as reference. We need to make sure the object is unique so that it doesn't get mixed up with all the other random stuff that gets drawn into the backgrounds of other cards. Yeah. It was yes.
Yep. It sounds like a fun challenge.
Yeah, and we have another case kind of playing off the same sort of idea here. Do you want to speak about this, Emily?
I mean, this one's it's not really a mystery what happened. Someone's been setting fires all over the place, clearly. And they're leaving this calling card of this mask design that gets scorched into the earth where it happens. And the real mystery is who's the one doing it. And you can figure out that it's this pyrotechnic performer when you notice the mask is the same design as the scorch mark on the ground, as the source of the explosion in suspicious detonation.
Yeah, cool. So again, this is where you can be playful because Magic Story is experienced non-linearly, and you have you have the space on 3 different cards to open the case, present the idea, and then close the case if you're paying attention to it. So, so again, zooming out a little bit more, we can conclude with some panoramas and, of course, the clue tokens that populate the sets. Forrest, speak to me a little bit about how you put these together and what you were thinking about when you knew you had to, present this and build it out in the set.
Yeah, that's a great question. So as you are probably aware, there are a lot of little puzzles in the game. Our puzzle master, Mark Gottlieb, was really the brainchild behind. It was his brainchild, and he was really the mastermind behind all of this stuff. And it presented a really unique challenge when commissioning because we had to hide very specific grid-shaped patterns in our art. And as you know from seeing magic art all throughout the years, we are focusing on dynamic compositions, fun camera angles, anything to give a still image motion and personality. And we had to balance that with having at least a portion of the image that was as flat as possible to lay out a specific grid shape to assist people in solving these puzzles. This is a good example of a fairly subtle one, but the next piece of art was one that presented a big challenge. And so what we did here is we used the negative space between books to create this grid shape. And there was a lot of internal discussion, I remember, when this came in. It's like, will people get it? Is this going to be enough to really communicate that grid aspect of the puzzle design to people? And yeah, I think it turned out great. And this one is by Wayne Wu, I believe, and yeah, just an amazing magic artist, and he did great on this piece.
And the thing with all these, like the art that got used in the puzzles, is they still had to make sense on their own as magic cards.
Yes.
As magic art after the puzzle had been solved. Because if we took this art and we were just like, okay, make sure you get the puzzle piece in there, and then it didn't work as like this creature card afterwards, that would not have been great.
Yeah, it would have like had a very short life as a magic card, so it really had to fit both of those things, and yeah.
And you spoke a little bit about this, but as an art director, it's a strange position to request your artist to intentionally paint very stiff, rigid, regimented illustrations, because you're always trying to get them out of that space. So you flip the script on them a little bit, right? You're like, yeah. Can you speak a little bit to that experience? Like,
I mean, sorry.
Yeah.
It was, we did our best to help the artist with this. I know that Deborah made a ton of custom templates that they could put over their art to assist them in creating these grids. And it took a lot of feedback and back and forth. I think this piece in particular is one of the ones that I commissioned. And of course, Wayne was doing the thing that great artists do, and he had put a book on its side and things that suggested more history in the bookcase. And we had to just go back and forth and say, hey, this has to be a perfect grid to solve the puzzle. And so it took a little bit of extra work, but we tried to set up our artists for success. And I think the end results definitely speak for itself.
And maybe we can jump ahead to the clues, but the clues are also a space where you can get a little bit meta on trying to communicate what the clues of the mystery are, right? This is a cool visual design space on these tokens.
Absolutely. I mean, the clues were, I wouldn't say necessarily a little bit easier, but definitely from our artist's perspective, it was more about making sure that the objects matched, the clue object was consistent throughout the where it showed up, but also the number of them and then sometimes the pattern. And so it wasn't as rigid, like literally, as the grids, but it presented its own set of challenges. But I mean, tokens are always fun because they're like a big piece of art, and these were no exception. But definitely a little bit easier to, a little less of an interesting challenge than the grids.
Sure. I guess we can end on, again, aligning art in an intentional way. There are some panorama images that also take a lot of coordination from the perspective of an art director, but these are images that really invite the audience to participate and sort of match to, again, solve this big case. So as we conclude with these images, what can you speak about with the challenges or the fun elements of this?
Yes, this was one of those instances where I was so glad that Deborah was the lead art director on this set, because I think this is one of those challenges that really puts a lot of restrictions on an art director, but also activates them and their creativity. So what Deborah decided was the best course of action is to find a single artist that could do all 10 and still maintain the quality bar that we expect on our magic cards. And I think for borderless cards especially, that's a lot more art to do. So we reach out to Sergei Glushakov, who is this amazing environment artist, and agreed to do all 10 of them. And as they came in, Deborah had to constantly be checking how they would print, because that's really the important part. All of these cards needed to line up perfectly in order to complete the puzzle. And so making sure that our downstream partners had all the notes that they possibly needed to crop them properly, so when they went to print that they would line up, was definitely a really fun and interesting challenge. And I think, Deborah really knocked it out of the park.
It was also, Mark Gottlieb was pretty involved in these, very, very involved in these too, because he really wanted to make sure that, we could get the pieces in that we needed. So I remember there was quite a bit of back and forth too about like, oh, is the shape obvious enough? Is the material too subtle? Things like that.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things Deborah really wanted to communicate to the viewer was when they picked up one of these cards, there is a sense of incompleteness. There are these things that trail off the edge, and there's these incomplete shapes that are meant to give you the impression, hey, I think there's more to this image, and that is meant to inspire you.
The lines of light. The lines of light. Yeah.
Of course, yeah, and the barrier, the anchors, and that line of the glowing ribbon of crime scene tape was another element that carried throughout them, and it made it easier to connect them. And as you can see here, these are the 3 examples we just talked about, and even though there are different environments, they line up perfectly and create a letter or spell out a little bit of something. And right here is RNA. I believe this puzzle has already been solved, but
yeah, it's been solved.
But if you want to go in cold and solve it yourself, this is just a little taste of the solution.
Great, and this is what we are ending with. Like Forrest said, I invite you to try to solve this puzzle. I hope some of the clues that we've given you in this presentation and allow you to understand the visual language which was at play. Think grids, think shapes, and think about that light and shadow dichotomy. So the more lights, that's kind of a hint. The more lights, the closer you are to solving the mystery. Please give us a round of applause for Forrest and Emily for joining us today. So we do have time for a few questions. If you have a question that you would like to ask either the world building team or the art direction team, we'll make a small queue at the microphone. We have about 8 minutes, so that's usually about 3 or 4 questions. Go right ahead.
Hi there.
Hi.
I was actually really wondering, with the guilds taking a back seat in this set, they become a lot more of the setting of these murder mysteries, right? Making up the cast of victims and murderers. How did the aesthetic design for the guilds change as they took on that kind of role as different characters in a murder mystery, as opposed to their usual positions as the guilds?
Yeah.
So because the guilds took a backseat, we weren't concerned with like revamping their overall look too much. We applied it more to individuals. First example coming to mind is Judith, part of the Rakdos Guild, but in this set she played the role of a femme fatale. So we kind of updated her costuming to help her fit into that role a little better. But yeah, the guilds themselves we didn't touch too heavily. I think that is something that if we were to do, it would be for if and when we ever go back to Ravnica again, and we can actually like focus more time and effort into developing them.
Yeah, I think that was one of the really interesting things that you both did with the set is that you determined the detective silhouette and these important aspects that define an investigator. And then you married that to the really strong, iconic visual design that already existed for all the guilds. And so there was more of like a marrying of theme to existing world building, which was really cool stuff.
Yeah, we didn't show some of the concept. We didn't show the concept art here, but we do have guild aligned detectives, which we developed. We took the detective silhouette and we adapted it to the guild costuming, but that's not like for the entire guild. That's just like for maybe like a handful of the members or something like that.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
So the thing that I find interesting from set to set are the magical tools, and I get a lot of inspiration from like examining these magical tools and thinking about how I could bring those into the real world as an engineer. I was curious how magical tools change from set to set, or if like we'll be seeing some of the magical tools from this set and future sets, or if it has to just change due to the virtue of being on a different plane.
Yeah. How does tech, does tech travel through the multiverse? Yeah. Or is this just tech that's going to stay on Ravnica, would you say?
I mean, given that we have the omen paths now and that people are going to be traveling along them more, I would not be surprised if some of the stuff we created for this set shows up on other planes in the future. But the tools that we create are usually we usually think about it more from like, what do we need for this specific set, and then we build it from there. And sometimes it just means like we're creating everything new. Sometimes it means we can look to the past and like pull some stuff forward. But it really just depends on the needs of the card set that we're developing for.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
I hope if we do go back to Ravnica, we see some of this stuff. I'd hate to lose it entirely. Sorry, go ahead.
So we talked about dichotomy a few times, but I specifically wanted to ask about how you decided to balance the aesthetics of like the noir aesthetic, which I kind of like associate more with like New Capenna and the like hats and jackets, and the more established aesthetic of Ravnica. Because when we're looking at Karlov Manor, I got like a lot of kind of like almost Versailles vibes.
Yeah.
Very courtier kind of looks, I guess.
Yeah. I think what we discussed, and you can speak to this in a moment, something I came away with in our discussions is that noir is not a place. And because the murder mystery genre takes many forms, there are stories that are like cozy stories, and there are stories that are unnerving almost in the realm of horror. And it does have like this wide range, but I think the key feeling I got, because I had similar questions as you did, I came to this team like, what's happening here? And noir is not a place was a cool takeaway. Noir is a feeling or a visual design more than a location. And that was a cool insight. I don't know if you could speak to that, but.
Do you want to?
Go for it.
I need to organize my thoughts a bit if you have any.
No, totally fine. Yeah, this is something that I'm sure if Deborah was here, she could speak to quite a lot. But what I think is really interesting about this set is that Ravnica has always felt like, well, it's like fantasy Prague, New York. Prague, York? Does that make sense? But it is the perfect setting for a set that has detective elements in it, because it is a plane that is almost entirely a city. So there are nooks and crannies everywhere. Truly like a great place to have a crime happen and then investigate. But I think that a lot of people probably go to like the more of the Art Deco feeling when they think of noir in particular, but it's beneficial to remember that noir is just a small portion of the, or not a small, it's a large portion of the set, but it is just a portion, and there are a lot of different tonal targets that are very fitting of Ravnica, and so yeah, that is a really great question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it helps that setting it on Ravnica, because Ravnica is a little more versatile. Like we can throw different hats on it, different like tonal hats on it. Like the time before for GRN and RNA, it was more of like this Cold War paranoia vibe. And then this time when we go back, we can try it out. We can like lean more into this noir aesthetic, and then when we go to another world, when we come back again, we can try, I don't know, whatever tone fits next. And I think that's just because Ravnica is like it's such a fleshed out world that it can support all these different approaches, these different tones, without it feeling, I guess, one note.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for your question. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. This will be our final question.
Sorry.
There, you're good.
So as a concept artist myself, I know the importance of things like color and shape language and being able to effectively communicate information about a character. How do you balance effective character design with not spoiling elements of the mystery in the cards? Like what was your guys' approach to being like, you know, oh, this character is dangerous, but they might not necessarily be the killer per se?
Yeah, I think a lot of that's a great question, and I think a lot of that comes into play in the lighting we spoke of before. Lighting is, color temperature of lighting and how we use shadows are a very strong visual tool, and that piece that we saw earlier, where what I'm just going to refer to as middle tree, my favorite tree of them all, has the subtle light cast over her face. Is this amazing foreshadowing or three-shadowing of the true perpetrator of this mystery. And so I think when you are in a situation where the costuming can't tell the entire story, then you lean more heavily on cues from the environment and the lighting, things like lighting, color, temperature. I think that's also where a lot of the memento mori come into play. We can hide the little hints of macabre crimes around the scene, and that gives the viewer a hint that something might be amiss, and what you see may not be the entirety of the story.
Yeah, rather than building it into the character designs a lot, it was more card level solves, because we'd have characters that would show up on multiple cards, and if you're telegraphing in their design, this is the killer on every single card, you're giving the game away. So what we did more was just like, they show up on all these cards, and then we would just adjust how much light and shadow or environmental effects, like you were saying, around them.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, we are out of time. Thank you again for joining us. I hope you have an awesome con, and yeah, go play some Magic. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, y'all.